Hello and welcome to the Creators Guild podcast. I'm Chris Howell and with me,
Jared Lovelady.
and we are here to talk about all things creative. As always, we start out reading from our book. If you remember last time, we read where Tawara had been doing a little bit of research, studied some things, finding some things out on her own, and discovered a few mysteries. So we're going to dive right in. Get it on this side. If you haven't bought it yet, again, Flight from Shadows, go get it. So today we're going to read Chapter 13. Okay. Chapter 13, Learning Lessons. Cycle of Petnala, Year 12-182. In all of my years training others with the sword, I have never had such a student. I do not understand how someone can be so stubborn and malleable at the same time. If she chooses to continue, the princess will be ranked among the best master swordsmen, if she can get out of her own way. Journal of Vargan Duchesne, 6th day of the cycle of Aelith, year 12-180. The afternoon sun was bright in the cloudless summer sky. A gentle breeze carried away some of the heat and rustled the leaves of tall quaking aspen trees, making shadows dance on the eastern edge of the arena floor. The arena was large, designed for horse training. It was surrounded by a high open fence with multiple gates, a house guard in full regalia standing at each. The westernmost gate opened onto a paved pathway which led toward the estate and its manor house. A cloud of dust was carried away on the breeze, caused by Tawara as she lay sprawled on her back in the center of the arena. She stared at the sky for only a moment. Her tilted blue eyes squinted against the brightness of the sun before she rolled to her side and rose smoothly to her feet. She wore a white blouse top with a close collar and tight cuffs. Her matching loose-fitted breeches were tucked into soft, knee-high deerskin boots. She had been tossed to the ground enough times that her clothes were more brown now than white. She had sweat through the silk in spots, giving the appearance of having been splattered with muddy water. Strands of golden hair mingled with the sweaty mud on her forehead, and small rivulets of perspiration left runnels on her face. She wiped her forehead with the back of her hand before brushing away stray hair behind her pointed elven ears. "Do you know what you did wrong, Princess Swordling?" came the gruff voice of a short, barrel-chested elf who stood opposite her in the arena. His mannerisms and lilting brogue were typical of the northeastern region of the High Elf realm, or so she had come to understand. He wore the same outfit as her, but in gray rather than white. Unlike hers, his had a single smudge of dirt marring the otherwise pristine outfit. His piercing green eyes bored into her. "I'm not a princess yet, Master Duchesne," she replied, annoyance in her voice. She hated when he called her that. "Oh, I must have forgotten in my old age," he said, rolling his eyes. "Forgive me, your royal princess-elect Swordling Tawara. Or do it be Princess Swordling-elect Tawara? You see how confusing it gets? Why don't I just stick with Princess Swordling for now?" She huffed at him, which only made him grin. Then he furrowed his brow at her, and his voice became gruff again. "No, I ask you a question, you royal pain in my backside. What did you do wrong?" She was used to his teasing, but it still irked her. He had been training her with the sword for nearly 2 years now, and she saw through the facade of his gruff manner and sarcasm. She knew he cared deeply about properly instructing her. He was an experienced swordsman and an excellent instructor. "I let you strike me again?" Tor replied hesitantly. "Well, of course there's that," Duchesne said, shaking his head. "But why was I able to strike you? Think, princess. What did you do that let me in your guard?" She thought for a moment and considered how he had struck her and taken her to the ground. "I overreached?" she asked hesitantly. "Was that a question or a conclusion?" came his flat reply. "I overreached," she said more confidently. "I extended too far, and you were able to step in and strike me with your sword and knock me down at the same time." "Very good," he said, and walked to her. He demonstrated her movement, holding his practice sword in front of him, showing her where she had made her mistake. "You're not confident in your movements. That makes you hesitate. When you realize your hesitation is getting you in trouble, you overextend, which makes an opening for your opponent. You must be confident, be decisive. Know what you want to do, then act without hesitation." She stepped away from him, He stepped away from her again. Your skills are coming along very nicely, he continued, but you must learn to trust yourself before you'll be able to master your blade. She raised her practice sword, her blue eyes sparkling in the sunlight as she considered. With a sigh, she brought the sword to a ready position. I will be more confident this time, she declared. Will you now? He asked, smiling, bringing his own sword into position. Princess Swordling is going to teach me a lesson, is she? She grinned fiercely at him. I am not the only one with dirt on my clothes today, he replied. I'm old and getting fat, he replied as he began to circle. Knocking me down is not that hard, but I seem to recall a certain swordling landing on her princess's rump several times today already. She chuckled at his comment. His hair was thinning and beginning to show gray in the bright red, but aside from the tiny pooch at his belly, he couldn't be more trim if he'd been carved with a knife. Well, I will see if I can even the score a bit, she declared, and stepped quickly in to attack. He was ready for her and danced lightly to the side, blocking her strike easily. But she really was learning. She continued to press the attack and focused on letting her body flow through the movements as she tried to overcome her tendency to hesitate. They played back and forth, trading strike for a few moments, until she saw her opening. He had feinted, meaning to draw her, but she saw what he was trying to do. She countered with her own feint and let herself appear to overextend again. When she shifted to take the opening, she pushed through the feint, turned his sword, and landed a hard strike against his ribs. He grunted at the impact, the briefest look of surprise flashing on his face before he broke into a grin. That was well done, princess, he complimented, dropping the tip of his sword to the dirt and rubbing his side where she had struck. As she lowered her own sword, the sound of a single person clapping came from beside the arena. Bravo, came a rich baritone that she instantly recognized. She cringed inwardly before turning toward the sound. Corvin and Tessera walked into the arena via the path. Corvin strode forward regally, as though expecting a procession, still clapping slowly. It had been only a fortnight since her return from the Crescent Valley. In that time, Corvin had slipped into the role as acting baron as though he had been preparing his entire life. Master Duchesne, the premier said as he approached, not taking his eyes off Tawara. Our high elf princess seems to be coming along nicely in her training. Wouldn't you agree, Tessera? You would know better than I, Premier, Tessera replied deferentially. Corvin glided to Tawara, stopping in front of her. Tawara, you look like a street urchin, he said as he reached out to brush dirt from her shoulder. He inspected his fingers with disgust before wiping them on the hem of his gold-embroidered tunic. He turned to Master Duchesne. Must she always become so disheveled when practicing the sword? He asked, glaring down his nose at the shorter man. Duchesne bowed to the Premier and spoke formally. Premier Corvin, the princess puts her whole heart into training and is a quick study. The state of her attire merely shows her level of dedication. I'm quite pleased with her progress thus far. Well, it is a relief to know she is learning something from all the training she receives. It seems most of her time is spent daydreaming. His voice dropped as he looked at Tawara, shaking his head slowly. Perhaps if your mother was still alive, she could have done better. Perhaps you would be less disappointing if she had been here to guide you where others have failed. At that last, he glanced at Tessera. She stood rigid with her hands crossed and her head bowed. Tawara felt her cheeks flush and her eyes begin to sting, but she knew better than to talk back or let her emotions slip. It would only make things worse. She held her tongue and forced her eyes to clear, clenching her jaw until it ached. Corvin sighed. Perhaps one day you will grow into a princess even your dear mother would have been proud of. Corvin turned to walk toward the edge of the arena, and Tawara let her shoulders slump. She scowled at the ground in anger and embarrassment as Corvin walked away from her. A beetle scuttled across the dirt near her toe. She lifted her foot and smashed it down, crushing the insect into the dirt, twisting her toe hard into the ground. How she wished that little beetle was Corvin. She would love to crush him into the dirt, to pulverize him into nothing. He was a snake. She couldn't think of a word to describe him. She just wished she could be free of Corvin and his constant barbs, free of the endless tirades about how disappointing she was. There had to be a way, even for a princess-elect to be free. She would find a way, someday. Princess Tawara, Master Duchesne's voice interrupted her reveling. She looked up to see all eyes on her. Did you hear what I said? Duchesne asked. Take up your position. My position? Tawara started to ask, before she saw Corvin striding into the center of the arena with a practiced sword in his hand. Tuara felt the color leave her cheeks and swallowed hard as she watched him glide across the dirt. He took a few practice swings to test the weight of the blade and doffed his tunic. In his vest and shirt sleeves, he maintained a look of regal dignity. His motions were whip-like as the practice sword whistled in the air. "Where's your head, girl?" Duchesne asked as he stepped up close to her. "You can't go against Corvin if your head's not in the game, even in practice." Duchesne's voice was low and held a sense of urgency. "No, this isn't the first time you've had to face him. Just remember your training and try not to let him strike you. Don't go for any strikes against him. Just keep moving and stay confident." She heard the words Duchesne spoke, but only half listened. She watched Corvin reach the center of the arena and settle into a meditative pose. He had his eyes closed and held his sword lightly in the fingertips of both hands in front of him, as though he were proffering it as a gift. Tuara remembered the last time he had instructed her all too well. She had had to go to the healer for her shoulder, and the bruises had taken weeks to fully disappear. "You've been working hard. You're more focused and better trained this time," Duchesne said. "Just do like I said. Defend and protect yourself. Nothing fancy, and you'll be all right." His eyes told Tuara that he didn't really believe what he was saying, but she appreciated the fact that Duchesne at least wanted her to come away unscathed. "I am waiting, Princess," Corvin said calmly. "I simply wish to test your skills, to see whether our dear Master Duchesne calls progress." "Remember, Premier," Duchesne said deferentially, "she is training to be a crown princess, not a sword master." Corvin's eyes crept open. His voice was calm as he spoke to Duchesne. "I know precisely what she is training for, Master Duchesne." He sneered as he said the word master. "I also know you have a position in this house. Your role is to train the princess with the sword. Are you trying to make an excuse for your own failures?" "No, Premier," Duchesne responded, bowing and taking a step back. "Only asking that you not treat her too harshly." He choked on the last word, and Tuara groaned inwardly. That was not the right phrase to use. Corvin's eyes blazed with a manic light, but his voice was honey. "Not too harshly, you say?" He flowed from his meditative pose, and his sword whipped through the air again. "You wish me not to treat our young princess too harshly. Perhaps you have been coddling her. Perhaps you think to keep your position in this high house longer if you can simply stretch out her training for as long as possible. No, Duchesne, I will not treat her harshly, but I will take the full measure of your training. If she is not as prepared as she should be, that is on your head." With that, he turned to Tuara, raising his sword blade in her direction. "What is it Duchesne calls you?" "Ah, yes, Princess Swordling." He gave her a mocking smile. "Come, Princess Swordling, let us see what skills you have learned." Before Tuara could prepare, Corvin flowed forward. She tried to bring her sword up to position, but he gave her no chance to react, striking her sword tip to the ground before stepping in to strike her hard in the sternum with the heel of his hand. As she stumbled backward and fell, he struck her hard on the left thigh with his sword. "You must always be ready, Princess. That is the first rule Duchesne should have taught you. There is no such thing as a gentleman in a sword fight. You either win or you die. Now, on your feet. Surely he has taught you more than how to fall down." Tuara scrambled to her feet, her breath coming in short gasps. Her thigh burned where he had struck her. Her legs spasmed from the blow as she settled her weight on it. She had a hard time keeping it from shaking. She held her sword at the ready, forcing her breath to calm. "I see you can at least hold a proper stance, even when you are in pain." He was pacing carefully, and he glanced down at her trembling leg as he spoke. "I am all right," said Tuara flatly. "I am not concerned about whether you are all right. My concern is whether you have been properly trained." He moved without warning, coming at her from the side. She pivoted, but too slowly. Her sword barely blocked the first strike, but the second jabbed her hard below the sternum. Her practiced outfit was silk and offered no protection. The blow came with such force that it drove the wind from her, and she doubled over, dropping to her knees, gasping in pain. Corvin smoothly stepped past her as she fell. As he did so, he kicked her hard in the back, knocking her prone into the dirt. This really is quite a pathetic... This really quite... Sometimes I make mistakes. "This is really quite a pathetic showing, Princess Swordling. How do you expect to be able to defend yourself from a real threat when you cannot keep yourself out of the dirt? Make no mistake, your assailants in the valley were amateurs. You survived by sheer luck. Such a favorable scenario is unlikely to happen again." He paused and looked at Duchesne. "Is this really all you've been teaching her? How to fall unceremoniously to become an assassin's pincushion? He shook his head, tisking, as he turned back to Tuara. On your feet, swordling. You are not dead, so you should not be on the ground. He struck her right thigh with his sword to emphasize his words. Come now. If you cannot get up on your own, I will assist you. The flat of the blade came down hard across her buttocks. She groaned in pain and embarrassment as she struggled to get to her feet before he could strike her again. She stood and clutched her abdomen, her breath still wheezing. Spots of pain were flaring up where each blow had landed. She didn't look at him. She didn't want him to see the pain or the fear in her eyes. There, you see, if you are still alive, you can still defend yourself, although I have not yet seen any signs that you are actually capable of doing so. He paused for a moment, looking her up and down. Are you ready? He asked, his voice sincere. Do you need a moment? He didn't wait for a reply. He flowed toward her once again, already striking as he moved. But she knew he would not wait for her, and he did not expect her response. She remembered the lesson Duchesne had just taught her. Be confident. Don't hesitate. She moved deliberately, sidestepping and parrying a strike that would have caught her near her left elbow and probably debilitated her hand on that side. Her sword came up under his arm and jabbed him in the ribs. It was not a hard blow, but he had not been prepared for her defense or counterattack. He sucked in a breath through gritted teeth, spinning to face her. His face was stunned for a moment. Then all pretense of a friendly training bout disappeared. He wore a stone mask, but his eyes smoldered. So, you have been toying with me. His voice was quiet and deathly cold. You dislike training with Duchesne and seek to shame him by feigning ignorance of the skill he so diligently seeks to instill in you. She stepped slowly back, shaking her head. No, I mean, She swallowed a lump in her throat. Very well. You wish to learn how to be a master swordsman. I will show you how very far you have left to reach that title. No, I don't want, was all she said before he was on her. He didn't use his hands or feet this time, only the sword. He danced around her smoothly. She tried her best to defend, but his blade was a serpent's tongue, flicking toward her. With every flick, it found a mark. If these were not practice swords, he would have cut her to ribbons, slashing her body with small cuts from head to toe. Instead, he used extra force with each strike, making sure she would feel the effects of the dulled wooden blade and blunted tip. She felt welts forming on her arms, her legs, and up and down her back. He finally struck her hard on the back of her hand that held her sword. It dropped to the ground as pain flared, and then her hand went limp. He stepped in close to her and flipped the sword around, ramming the pommel hard against her ribs. She fell to the dirt, crying out in pain. He stepped up to her and rolled her onto her back with his foot. Then he placed his boot on her throat. She grabbed his ankle as pressure was applied, pushing on her windpipe. Her eyes watered, and she fought for breath, her feet flailing in the dirt as the pressure increased. Corvin, came Tessera's voice from the side of the arena. This is no way to treat a princess of the realm. Tuara watched Corvin through blurry eyes. Her vision was starting to tunnel. My dear Tessera, Corvin replied, his voice harsh yet quiet, like a knife's edge rasping across a wet stone. She is not a princess of the realm, not in this arena. She must learn. I would not have her injured or killed because she is not properly trained. Be that as it may, Tessera began, her voice trailing off weakly under Corvin's gaze. Tuara wanted to cry out, to plead for help. He was going to kill her right here in this arena. Tessera and Duchesne were just going to stand there and watch. Tuara heard the crunch of Tessera's footsteps in the dirt as she backed away. Ah, little swordling, said Corvin, looking down at the princess lying in the dirt. You see that you are completely in my control. No matter how you train, you will not be good enough to best me. Do you understand? He gave just a little more pressure with his foot, and the world began to go black. Her head nodded frantically. Suddenly the pressure was gone, and she rolled to her side, coughing and gasping. Her hands were holding her throat, as though they could help draw the air in faster and bring relief to the pain. You must train her better, Duchesne. Far, far better. Corvin dropped the practice sword in the dirt beside Tuara and strode casually away. He retrieved his tunic as he left and made his way toward the back of the manor house that sat a few hundred feet from the arena. Duchesne rushed to her, dropping to his knees in the dirt. Princess Tuara, are you all right? His voice was pleading, yet quiet enough that it wouldn't carry to Corvin as he walked away. I'm sorry, Princess. No, don't get up. Sit and catch your breath. His hand shook as he checked her over, looking for signs of broken bones. She started to say, but it came out in a hoarse croak, and she cringed with pain in her throat. She swallowed slowly and tried again. Her voice was raspy, as though she had been shouting. I'm all right, Master Duchesne. I should have listened to you. I should not have tried to strike him. Ignoring Duchesne's protest, she used him for balance. Tuara got to her feet, wincing with each movement. Tessera reached her side, and she stood on shaky legs. No, you should not have, Tessera said. He was trying to teach you, and you deliberately provoked him. I saw how you baited him. Tessera's voice was cold. Her concern was written plainly on her face. She wrung her hands frantically. Tuara stared at the other woman blankly. That's not fair, governess, said Duchesne. Anger heated his words, but he kept his voice low. Corvin don't teach. He don't care about what happens to about what the princess is learning. He only wants her and all of us to know that he has us under his thumb. Master Duchesne, you will hold your tongue. Tessera's voice was sharp, and she looked around worriedly. I am not pleased with the results of Tuara's lesson, but I will not have you question the Premier's motives. She gently placed a hand under Tuara's arm. Help me get her to the manor house, Vargand, and keep any unwelcome thoughts to yourself. Duchesne grunted and took Tuara by the other arm. She winced at the contact, and he spoke apologetically. Come, princess, we'll get you to your room and get a healer to look you over. Tuara allowed them to lead her toward the manor house, though she could have made it on her own. Still, she limped and let them carry a bit of her weight. They kept her upright as they made their way out of the arena and up the paved pathway. Tuara sat in a copper tub in her bathing room. The steaming water drew the pain out of her aching body. She had sat in a cold bath for nearly an hour before switching to the hot water. The healer had looked her over and found no major injuries. She was mottled with bruises on her back and side. The healer thought Tuara's left wrist might have a small fracture, and that one or two of her ribs might be cracked from where Corvin had struck her with his sword pommel. She lay in the water, staring at the tiled mosaic on the domed ceiling. It was an ocean scene, with dancing waves sparkling in golden sunlight. A procession of high elf youths splashed and played in the waves, their expression of joy frozen in time. She wanted to slap them all in their stupid, smiling faces. You really shouldn't provoke Premier Corvin the way you did, Tessera spoke from a window seat across the room. She was looking out at the gardens below, and she turned to Tuara as she spoke. He is sophisticated and high-minded. He came to assess your skill and offer you his knowledge, and what do? You trick him. You cheat your way into striking him. I did not cheat. Tuara's voice was tinged with anger. I am good with the sword, only not as good as Corvin. I am no master swordsman. If I had truly defended myself, it would have been worse. Tessera stood and crossed the room to look at Tuara. You act like a child. Within 2 years, you will be formally crowned a princess of the realm. You must stop your childishness. Stop neglecting your training, as though your duties will simply go away. That is why the Premier is so hard on you. I do not neglect my duties, Tuara shot back, splashing water as she sat up to glare at the other woman, before she remembered her aching muscles, and slowly lay back. She did not relent in her appeal, however. You yourself have said that I am intelligent, and learn quickly. I simply wish to learn more. If I am to be the Queen's accolade, I must break through the boundaries set by my tutors. The Queen's accolade, Tessera huffed. Tuara, really. Yes, your mother had great aspirations for you. Were she still alive, perhaps she could have helped pave that path for you. But as it stands, that is not who you are. Besides, look what it has gotten you. You were almost killed because of it. Look at Lady Farandane. She held the same aspirations to become an accolade, and she is dead. You must get your head out of the clouds and back into reality. She sighed and continued in a softer tone. You must learn to embrace who you are, to embrace your position in the realm. Tuara rolled her eyes at the woman standing beside the copper tub. Tessera held her head high and looked down at Tuara, but she wrung her hands as she spoke. Tuara could see through Tessera's words. What did she know about a princess, or becoming an accolade? What did she know about losing a mother and being alone, or about oppression from an overproud advisor who took every opportunity to degrade her or harm her? It was not Tessera whose life was in danger for her ambitions. Tessera didn't realize that the death of Lady Farandane reinforced Tuara's commitment to her goal. Her mother had known there would be dangers. The threat was here sooner than Tuara had expected, but she held no illusions that her chosen path would be without peril. No, Tessera made excuses to cover for her own failings. If Tuara could not find an escape from her boundaries, if Tuara could find escape from her boundaries, she would take it. Tessera turned and strode slowly back to the window. Her voice was low as she spoke. So many times, especially on days like today, I wish your mother were still alive. Twara's ears perked up at the tone in Tessera's voice. It had a sad, almost dreamy quality to it. She was so confident, so strong. Everyone loved her. Your father changed when she died. I know he loves you, but he hasn't given you the real attention you need. He used to care about more than his image or the honor of his house. Your mother kept him in check. She would stand up to him, or to anyone, and face challenges head on. She trusted me, you know. She asked me to help teach you to be strong and brave. I want you to be confident, and a bit more trusting, perhaps, to face your challenges rather than try to avoid them or run away from them. If only I could teach you to be more like she was. Twara shifted in the tub. The movement seemed to break the spell, and Tessera visibly shook herself. Well, young lady, you cannot soak in the tub all day. You still have lessons this afternoon. I'll have a dress laid out for you. Master Hargon will be expecting you. Do not be late, or he will report you to Corvin, and you and I will both suffer his displeasure again. She gave Twara one more meaningful glance before striding purposefully from the room. Twara lay in the tub, thinking on what Tessera had said. She wanted to trust Tessera, or Duchesne, or anyone, but she could not trust them, and she couldn't stand up against Corvin alone. She was not her mother. Her mother was dead. She loved her father dearly, but he tried too hard to protect her. Twara was alone, with no one she could rely on. It seemed everyone who had a say in her life wanted to keep her in a box, to hold her back from reaching her potential, and she had enemies that would rather see her dead than achieve her aspirations. Despite them all, she would accomplish what her mother had wanted for her. She would simply have to figure out how to do it on her own. That thus ends chapter 13. So, Jared, how'd you like writing that chapter?
That was a fun one to write. It was, got to get a little nasty and show Corvin for who he really is.
Yeah. We wrote that one a long time ago. Like, a really long time ago. And it kind of like the other chapters, it's bounced around from place to place to place as far as where it was going to fall. But we try to put into every chapter our main focus, every chapter is we want you to know our characters and to love or hate them passionately. So hopefully you're getting some of that. But we try to put also into every chapter, there's something or things that will roll out, play heavily in the importance of the journey that Tawara's on and what's going to happen to her in this book, 2 books from now, and 4 books from now. We already know where all this stuff is going. So hopefully you pick up on those things, and as you read, you enjoy being able to think back, in 2 books and be like, oh yeah, remember when Tawara was training with Corvin and Duchesne in the arena? That's like this, way up here, So we've tried to think ahead. We haven't thought of everything, but
no, but it's in there. Nothing's done whimsically, so to speak.
Yeah,
it's all plotted.
Yeah. So hopefully you're getting that. Hopefully you're enjoying the story so far. And as always, like I said at the beginning of this episode, if you haven't bought the book, go buy it. If you have the book and you haven't read it, read it. If you haven't given us a review yet on either the book or the podcast or anything, you know the phrase, like, subscribe, rate, and review. Go do all those things. Help us get more eyes and share what we're working on with the rest of the world. So, speaking of getting more eyes on things and getting out to the rest of the world, we wanted to take today and talk about some of the things, the groups we're involved in that help us with giving us feedback, giving us some direction, and some of the people that we're meeting along the way. Hopefully, some of them will. Some of our have said they want to come on the podcast and talk about what they're doing with us. But this will be a little bit of an insight preview, so to speak, of potentially some people that we know locally.
Some of these people we've already had on.
Yeah.
And some are in the works.
Yep. We want to talk a little bit about the Springfield Writers Guild. So you'll see the map disappear a little bit here. And we've got to go the right direction here. Let me move my head a little bit. So we've got the Springfield Writers Guild. And this is, so you can see just a little snippet of what the Writers Guild is all about. There's Clarissa Willis coming up. It's going to be a guest speaker August 24th. We meet the fourth Saturday of every month, and there's always a particular topic, a genre, or author, or someone who is successful at writing already. And then we have conferences and all these resources. So right here coming in 2024, there's stuff that's coming up, and then between the pages we had a writers conference that's hosted by the Writers Guild. And then all the people that are on this board group right here, we've worked closely with a couple of them. Two of them are in our speculative fiction group. We give each other feedback, review, and rate each other's stuff, and help critique to try to improve each other's writings. They have different activities and things, but it's all centered around helping local authors figure out how to improve your writing, how to do websites, how to do podcasts, how to do lots of different things. So one of those things, Jared's already getting the window ready there, is SWG Goodreads. So if you know of Goodreads, this is the Springfield Writers Guild version of Goodreads. And this is connected to the actual Goodreads site. You can get to this site from Goodreads. And so some of these books are out on the Goodreads site. This is just like, here's all the Goodreads for local authors. So it's swggoodreads.org, and you can go check out the different authors that are on there. So we've done some book exchanges with a couple different authors. I haven't been able to get in and read a bunch of stuff, but there are a few authors. Jared, if you go to the mystery, thriller, suspense.
Thriller.
So I've read some of these books, and by read, I mean listened in audiobook. So read by somebody else's voice, but J.C. Fields, I've read all of his. The Sean Kruger series. There are, I want to say nine books in that series, and then a standalone. He's got another one coming out before too long. But yeah, J.C. Fields, it's like FBI, CIA, secret agent, or former agent, current agents working together and stuff. And each of these, I mean, I really like his book covers. I like move my head the other way. He's got everything, this particular layout that really works well with his novels. The Fugitive Trail, the Money Trail, the Assassin's Trail, it's all something, and each one flows. Each one you can read as a standalone. You could pick up book 6 and just read it, and it reads just fine as a standalone. But you get all the other plots and struggles and challenges if you start at the beginning and read your way through. So it's an interesting read, fun read about espionage and terrorism and trying to solve who the criminals are and catch the bad guys, all that. So then if you scroll down, Um, I haven't gotten into any of the other authors on this in this group yet, but down a little bit farther, maybe even far, maybe it's all the way at the bottom. There we go. Actually, scroll back up just a little bit. So I want to go one more right there. So Susan Keene is right here. So we're going to talk about the cozy mysteries here in a second, and they're a little bit further down. Susan Keene writes cozy mystery series, but she wrote this book, The Twisted Mind of Cletus Compton, and it's about. Well, I haven't read it yet, but it's about this guy, Cletus Compton. He shows up just briefly in one of the books, and then she writes in depth this story of Cletus Compton. And she and I sat down. We were at a conference, and I sat down and I was like, oh man, I wish I had a microphone so we could just sit and talk about her story style and her experience. She's really an interesting person to talk to. I don't remember where she teaches.
I'm not sure.
I don't remember. But she's teaches at a university, and then writes and has multiple books published. We'll scroll down and we'll show you down here. She's got this whole cozy mystery series that's all, the Kate Nash. I couldn't remember the name for a second. So Kate Nash series, it's like high heels and 9mm, or I can't remember what her catchphrase is, but you can go check out Susan Keene. She's got this whole cozy mystery world of Kate Nash, who's a former detective and like 5'2", really, really small. But then she's like, well, I make up for it with my ability to fire this gun. And then I've read some of the ones below that as well, the murder or the wedding cake murder and the different murder mysteries there. And that's this one's a little bit more classic cozy mystery of somebody who she has a cake shop and is very observant, and through being observant and being interested and curious about things is like, oh gosh, people are getting murdered. Kind of a Murder, She Wrote, only it's she bakes cakes and runs a cake shop. So go check out Susan Keene, some of her writing. It's fun stuff that's out there. And then if we jump over to the speculative genre. So there are a couple people in here that are in our speculative fiction genre group. So the Tarsal Saga by Alan Michaels. We got a signed copy of that from Alan, and
I've started it,
yeah.
But I'm only a few pages in. But it looks interesting. Yeah, I haven't even read the blurb on the back.
Yeah.
I haven't just been so busy. So
yeah.
But,
well, like we've said, maybe at some point I'll be able to prioritize or make time to where I can just sit down and read. But it's not an audiobook yet. So, Alan, if you're listening to this, when it's an audiobook, I'll be able to listen to it faster. That's why I was able to get through all the Sean Kruger and the Kate Nash and the Cake Mystery series, and but if I have to sit down and read it, as much as I enjoy doing that, ain't nobody got time for that.
Yep.
So there's a couple on here that you can see there's a lot of people that have written books that are here locally, and this is only some of them. This is only the people who've gotten their books up. Our book isn't even on here yet. Nope. Because we're terrible at being effective at doing those things. But there is, so S.V. Farnsworth, she's got, did she write besides, I don't remember, she writes space operas.
And she writes fantasy.
And fantasy, because the one where the Woman of the Stone is not a space opera.
No, it's a series.
Yeah.
I've actually started it as well.
Yeah.
This is the one where she came to us for fight scene.
Yes.
And I read it. I read the very beginning of the first book is a fight scene, and I read it, and I was thinking, she don't need our help.
Yeah.
She's doing just fine. So, yeah, the first chapter of that, or well, no, not even the first chapter, but the first beginning of that one, also very good. Just a matter of getting the time to sit down and read the rest of it.
Yeah. And that's really so. Summer's in our writing group and in the speculative fiction group, and we bounce stuff off each other. And sometimes you read somebody's stuff and they're like, okay, I'm really worried about this, and I need a solid critique. And then you read it and you're like, you missed a comma. I mean, you try to give a good critique, but sometimes you read somebody's thing and you're like, yeah, just publish it, man. Have somebody edit it. But for the most part, send this sucker out there. Let people read it, So that's not always the case. So you can go find Summer's stuff. I think if you click on this, does it take us to
I'm not
her
sure.
page or to the... Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, there we go. Yeah, so you can go to... If you go to... all of the books, all of the images in the SG Goodreads, I think all of them. I haven't clicked on all of them to see, but most of them take you to either the website for the author or to like an Amazon or a Shopify page where you can buy the book or books that are here in Goodreads, and then you can go see what they're all about.
Let's go on Alan's.
Oh, you got to make sure you're not a robot.
Yeah, it's taking to Amazon is what it's doing. So.
Okay. Yeah. But for whatever reason, it's trying to do the CAPTCHA thing, and maybe we are robots. You don't know. You don't know if I'm a robot or not. So I'm not going to reveal it.
He's not a robot. You
don't know if he's a robot. You don't even know if he's really real. He could be inside my head right now. None of you would know it. So yeah, if we go, Jared, if you switch to just some of the other pages we have open up there.
Yeah.
So Xavier Cain, his book, you can see right there, Literary Titan Book Award. He actually has several books that are in some, that he's gotten awards for and in some prestigious competitions for. Most of what he writes, or at least that he and I, that we've talked about together, are is kind of along the lines of the horror or dark fantasy genre. So he and Art, if you remember, Art was on not too long ago. He and Art get together and talk dark fantasy and Cthulhu and all that stuff. But if you remember when we talked about going to Tremendicon, we participated in the competition for the trivia for Star Wars, and Xavier was the third member of our amigos when we participated in that group. And really, he mostly carried us, but we did okay.
Yeah, we
contributed.
We all contributed.
Yeah, I can say that and feel semi-confident in that. But yeah, I have some stuff of his. I haven't had a chance, like I said, haven't had a chance to read it yet. But interesting guy to talk to. Has some really good insights into things, and everything I've seen looks to be a good storyteller. Because we have done some reading of his from a critique perspective, so he's got good insights, good writing skills.
Yeah,
and he's won awards for it. So
he's good.
He's got some stars right there and a sticker to back it up.
Yeah.
So we also have Liz Verity. So Liz Verity is a fantasy author. She's working on like a big mega story right now. But she also does, it's lizverity.com. Oh, Xavier's, is it author Xavier Pokane? I want to get people's websites.
No.
Nope, just Xavier Kane. So yeah, go check out Xavier Kane, and then lizverity.com. Liz Verity, she does editing. She's actually going to be on an episode coming up here soon. She does critiquing and editing, and very detailed and very good with feedback and the information she provides. You can come to her website, sign up for a newsletter, and she sends out on a regular basis specific things. And we're going to have her on to talk about some of those things. But she comes on, or she talks about, gives you ways to improve your writing and to improve your creative process. Or if you're stuck in a rut, here's methods to get out of that rut. Or if you're having trouble developing a character, here's tools and techniques for doing character development and stuff. So
she's an excellent resource for the beginning writer, even the experienced writer.
She's an excellent resource for us as beginning writers because we're beginning writers. Yeah. But given her feedback and the detail she goes into and her experience and her area of study, even from an experienced writer perspective, she'd be an excellent resource if you need somebody to do some content editing, because that's where she focuses on. It's not grammar and spelling and stuff, although she'll give you some feedback on that, but it's really content editing. She knows story structures. I don't know how well we listened to her, but she gave us some really good advice. So, and then another friend of ours, Lynn Combs, she's working on we've read a couple of things from her, but within the writing group or the speculative fiction group where we've critiqued her writing. So again, same thing. She's got some very big story stuff that she's working on right now. She's published, and you can see A Pathway to Mystery there and more. She's got some short stories published. She's won some awards for some of her short story authors stuff out there. So, and she's one of she sits on the board of the Springfield Writers Group and is in our speculative fiction group. So we see a lot of her, and we wanted to kind of introduce you to a few of the people that we interact with via books and websites and introductions. Hopefully some of them will come on. We know some of them have already said, some of the people in our group have said they want to come on and share what they're doing with us, but eventually, hopefully all of them will come on.
It's a lot easier to have guests than it is to make up stuff, so
yeah,
we'll hopefully see more of them.
And it's probably much more interesting than just... No, we are interesting. I'm sending out the wrong vibe here. I'm going to get back into hypnotize mode. We are interesting, and you love listening to us, and you want to tell all your friends about how amazing we are when we talk about things. Jared, jump back over to speculative again. And then I think all the way down at the bottom. Yeah, right there. So almost missed the locket.
Which we can't see.
What?
Your big head's right in front of
my head. Oh, you don't get to see it.
Okay, that just takes you to the Amazon.
So. Yeah, so click on... There you go. So yeah, it takes you to Amazon, but KS Brixie, you can go The Locket. I have this book as well. Again, you got to get it on audiobook, Brixie, so I can listen to it and then talk about it more. Because time is money, and there just ain't enough of it in either form. So yeah, this is book 1 of Tales from Avonrand. And book 2, she's actually, I think book 2 is written and she's working on editing it right now.
Yeah, I believe that's correct.
I could be wrong, but I think she's working on that right now. I don't know what the date is for book 2 coming out, but I think this one is supposed to be a trilogy. So book 1 came out, was it earlier this year, end of last year, right in that time frame?
Yeah, right around there.
So yeah, right around that time frame. It's got some more coming out.
How about the end of last year? November 23rd.
Does it say it on it? Oh yeah. You can't see it again because my head. What if I just go back and forth? La la la. Now can you see? Now can you see? What if I pull a, who's the wrestler who turned actor?
The Rock.
There's a lot of those. No, the gosh dang it.
So
There's a bunch of them. Anyway, if I wave my hand in front of my face, you can't see me. You can't see me. Whatever. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. And you're probably like palming your forehead right now in disgust, but or shame or something. But anyway, November of last year is when book 1 came out. So book 2 is on its way, and she's excited about it, and I'm excited to read it. But when I have time, I'll get around to it. I need to just make a priority to sit down and actually read some things with words.
Yeah, I do too, because I've got plenty of them to read.
If I could figure out a way to have glasses that had like the Kindle embedded in my glasses, and then when I go to the gym, so I go to the gym in the mornings, or while I'm driving, just have it read, playing in front of my eyes while I'm driving, because most of these are available on Kindle. And I just won't tell anybody that, well, I'm reading a book while I'm driving. Because that's safe. So yeah, go check out some of these creators that are working on their art. This took us. Let's go back. Can you go back to
back to what?
The Goodreads page. So yeah, swggoodreads.org. Go there and check out it. The best thing you can do if you are interested in supporting, and this is true not just of authors, but of anybody who creates art. If you're not somebody who's like super into creating your own thing yet, but you want to support people who are working on things, go try to find some groups of people who are up and coming or just getting started. Find their stuff and make an investment in it. Invest a little bit of time. The money, it's not that much. Like Kim's book is $10-12, and go do that a couple of times a year and read, rate, and review their stuff and give them some feedback. As Jared and I we've gotten the direction from multiple sources that are, if you want to promote your first book, write a second book. If you want to promote your second book, write a third book. So we're working on editing book 2 and trying to get it ready to publish. But even with that, it's when we go to our Amazon page and we're like, there's another review, there's another rating. It's like, yay. And I know every single person in the whatever art creative community, even if you're not doing it to try to get accolades, it feels really good and is really morale boosting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like The Mask. It's like, you like me. You really like me. So go check out authors. go investigate. There's all the different genres: inspiration, mystery, thriller, romance. I mean, we're going to branch out when we finish this series. We've talked about getting into. We've got a cozy fiction or cozy mystery series that we already have some notes on it, and then a kids like a chapter superhero book and multiple different things. So hopefully at some point we have books spread across all these genres. I'm not sure about the anthologies and poetry, but maybe. Maybe we'll write something and then you'll read it and then we'll be like, you see, I'm a bit of a poet and you did not know it. What?
All right, with that.
Yes. With that. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for listening. Go check out those authors. Go buy our book. And until next time, go in good spirits. Thanks for listening to the Creators Guild podcast. Don't forget to get your copy of A Flight from Shadows, available on Amazon. While you're there, please rate it and give it a review. If you like the Creators Guild, please like and subscribe, and make sure to share it with your friends. Until next time, go in good spirits.